A Womanizer's Guide to Axiom, Chapter 9. Titus approached the Bube, who was sitting on a small bench looking into the forest. She turned to Titus as he closed and smiled. I am feeling much better. Titus smiled back, his weariness mostly forgotten now.
That is very good to hear. Unfortunately, as much as I'd like to explore your recovery, Savi doesn't think we've got long here.
He offered his hand to help her up, not that she looked like she needed it.
Care to join us?
She grinned at the obvious comment of extracurricular activity. Well, Save might just have to deal with it, pretty boy. She stood. So what is the plan? She is securing supplies, so you need to secure a map? His smile slipped into a grin. They really needed to find a moment. She was...
something like that. Let's go looking. You been to any of these islands before?
She nodded. I have been to many places. This world has many things to offer. I met Save on the coast of the affiliation. She required a bodyguard. She shrugged. I do not believe the job will ever be finished. After asking a few hunters, Titus and Asi, to end up in the presence of a hunter named Javier. He seemed to be the one to talk to when it came to maps.
What ho, good man Javier. I hear you're the man to talk to about a map. Have any I could persuade you to part with? Primarily around the coasts.
Hopefully he had a couple that Titus could sort through. Javier gave Titus a hard eye. He was aged past his years, thanks to the jungles of the island and the hunting of dangerous beasts that dwelled there. You need a map for the wilds. Why would you go into the wilds? Asi stepped in. He has me. Javier shrugged. Fair enough. I have some hunting maps for the coast. I will part for them for 10 copper each, a reduced price since the caves have been hunted out there. Grinning at Asi stepping in, Titus shrugged.
Works for me. I'll take all 3. I'm not sure where we're going to start looking.
He handed over a silver and 10 coppers. About a dozen questions sprang to his mind, all he'd need to talk to Savi about. Titus received the maps, and the two returned to the table to which Titus had been speaking with Savi earlier. Savi was currently still gone, securing supplies. This gave Titus time to unroll and go over the maps. Asi scowled at the maps. They were crude and hand-drawn with landmarks that were not named or referenced. You have been had. These are useless. While Titus was unhappy with the map quality, to a hunter he was sure it made perfect sense. He didn't think Javier had misrepresented himself. It was simply a matter of the maps being for hunters, not impromptu treasure seekers. Titus's brow creased as he looked at the 3 maps.
Not had, really. Just another layer of interpretation, love.
He slid them around a few times until he was pretty sure that they were arranged in the way the coastline looked. There was a little overlap between them, which helped. He noted a few places that could be promising, but without actual landmark references, it could be tricky. He looked around the room. Maybe a hunter could be persuaded to explain some of the landmarks. Savi returned to the table before Titus could find any hunters to help. Okay. I secured some food and water, some climbing materials for the trip. Do we have a location? Titus frowned as he looked at the maps on the table. Tapping one of them, he looked at Savi.
This one's right out. It's almost the wrong side of the island.
Putting one finger on each of the other 2, he looked thoughtful.
It's probably either this spot here...
Tapping the cove to the left,
or it could be one of these 2.
The right map had 2 spots that might have been coves or just sloppy penmanship.
Any hints from the amulet? It really might be either.
Savi examined the map with a furrowed brow. As if trying to remember something, she pulled out the amulet and placed it on the table for the 3 to use. Titus examined the amulet again, comparing it to the crude maps on the table. He'd looked at it before, but having the map in front of him might help. The eye in the center of the amulet was slightly misshapen upon further examination, specifically the pupil. Savi could see the discovery on Titus's face as he searched it. You found something, didn't you? Placing the amulet on the two maps separately, he was able to discern that the pupil was quite literally in the shape of one of the coves on the map. Titus sat back in his chair, grinning.
Well then, I suppose that settles it.
Getting a general idea of the area from the map again, he quickly estimated where they needed to go. As long as they were going in the general right direction, they could fine-tune it as they went.
I'm guessing these hunters don't have much use for horses, No matter, I suppose. The jungle is thick enough to make riding tricky. Shall we, ladies?
He flashed his winning smile at both Asie and Savi. Savi rolled her eyes, but Asie grinned back hungrily. Yes, let's, Savi said, and the three packed up and headed out. She gave Titus 3 rations and a water skin, with enough for a week. She kept any climbing and caving gear to herself, but that would be fine as far as Titus was concerned. The jungle was thick and heavy. As the sun reached its apex, the humidity rose, and Titus found his decision to join these women a regrettable one. Sighing, Titus pulled his now sodden shirt away from himself in a futile attempt to cool his sweaty body. This was miserable. This was a mistake. He should just... Titus looked up, seeing Asie's pants pulled tight across her as she walked a few steps ahead. Well, it wasn't all bad. He glanced to the side, and Savi struggling through the brushes as well. He glanced to the side, as Savi struggled through the brush as well, her sweat-soaked shirt clinging to her lithe form. Sometimes, he supposed, sacrifices were necessary. Titus cleared his throat. Did it just get a little hotter? He wasn't sure that was really possible. The sun moving quickly down in the sky made things a little better. The trio finally broke the jungle after hours of hiking into a small waterfall area that flowed into a decent-sized stream. Asie's hand went to Savi's shoulder. We have not slept in 2 days, Kazi. Savi nodded. Fair enough. But with the freeze behind us, we can only afford a few hours, 6 tops. The scenery was absolutely gorgeous upon reflection, something only the wild, untouched lands of the islands could produce. Titus's mind, which had been focused on his 2 lovely companions all day, suddenly reminded him that he himself hadn't slept in about 2 days either. A yawn that nearly cracked his jaws escaped before he had a chance to stifle it. Truth be told, he'd been running on pure libido for the past hour or so, and he was ready to drop. Still, that was no cause to let his form slip. Looking at himself, he really tried to appreciate the trees and stuff. It was hard. He'd never found much fulfillment outside. Well, aside from the occasional tryst under the stars, of course. On a basic level, he understood that people really connected with nature. He'd even used it more than once in his pursuits. It just never really spoke to him personally. Like most things in life, it was just another means to an end. Speaking of which...
This really is deeply gorgeous. I had no idea the islands could produce such beauty as this.
When the women looked at him, he wasn't looking at the scenery, but right at them with a tired smile. Before it got away from him, he was moving ahead.
We should probably sleep in shifts. We wouldn't want Defree catching us unawares. Savi, are you good for the first watch? Asie looks like she needs a break, and you look like you're good for another few miles.
He turned to the exquisite Mbube.
Asie, do you need a hand with your shoulder? I've learned a few massage techniques that may help with aches.
His smile for her was touched with genuine concern, but promised a good deal more. Save rolled her eyes hard. Asie smiled. I thank you, pretty boy, but I am fine. Savi shook her head. No, He's right. You need to sleep first. I can watch. Asi was a spirited lady, but her fight was gone after the previous night's action. All right, I sleep. She turned to one of the more comfortable-looking small palms and eased down against it. I will take a rain check on the massage, pretty man. She grinned as she closed her eyes. Titus shrugged as he settled against a different tree nearby.
Suit yourself.
He smiled as well, then tried to get a little sleep. The dreamless sleep was welcomed by the wayward aristocrat, and so was the awakening. 2 or 3 hours later, he was shaken awake by none other than Asi, on hands and knees, over him, grinning down. Save is asleep. Time to put your money where your mouth is. Titus grinned, breathing quickly. He wasted no time pulling her down for an intense kiss, trying to be careful with her shoulder. He didn't hold anything back. This has been Chapter 9 of A Womanizer's Guide to Axiom, written by myself, Zachariah Van Sliders, and Mr. Mark Bell. All Titus, Petronius, Augustus, Faustus III lines done by Mr. Mark Bell, and all other narration produced and done by me, Zachariah Van Sliders. This is the result, the product of a 5-year RPG that we did in text-based form over the course of roughly 5 years, not to be redundant. We would like special thanks and consideration given to Wizard's Respite for hosting the written version of this show. You can read all previous chapters here on wizardsrespite.com. You can also watch the show and listen to it, as you are right now, through the embedded YouTube videos. And should you want to catch back up in order via listening, you can check out Old Man Gaming and the playlist I have there for all previous episodes. Thank you very much, and we should be back next week with another episode.